All right, now what about Meg? Shall I see her? Oh, participants one, is that her?
What is she?
No, I don't see the panelist, that's Meg.
She's a panel, yeah.
I'll text you when she's ready. Swear.
I don't know how your phone works from here, because mine doesn't.
You're good,
You'll be able
Teresa?
to hear her, you won't be able to see her. I should be able to see her, but I don't see her yet.
You ready? Yep.
Yep, we're ready.
Let's call this meeting to order at 7:02 PM. Start with the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's have a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Sunshine Law notice. In accordance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act, public meetings may be held in person or by means of communication equipment to include streaming services and other online meeting platforms. This meeting is being held in person and through the Zoom meeting platform, being broadcast from Borough Hall, 748 River Road, Fairhaven, New Jersey. Public participation for this regular council meeting of December 20th, 2021 is available by call-in phone number or through web conference Zoom. Members of the public will be on mute until it is time for questions or comments, which will be announced. At that time, the public has the opportunity to question, comment by phone or through Zoom by the raise hand button and will be called on at the appropriate time. Notice of this meeting was included in the schedule of meetings, which was adopted by resolution number 2021-13 and sent to the Asbury Park Press, the Two River Times, the Hub, and the Star Ledger on January 7th, 2021, posted on the Borough website, the bulletin board in the municipal building, and has remained continuously posted as required under the statute. With adequate notice having been given, the Borough Clerk is directed to include this statement in the minutes of this meeting. Allison, may I have a roll call, please?
Councilmembers Christner Key,
I don't see Meg on here as a panelist or an attendee. I'm just texting her.
Hodge,
Here.
McCabe, here, McHugh,
Here.
Neff, here, Rodriguez.
Here. All right, first up, workshop session, street opening approval requests. Borough moratorium is November 15th to March 30th. Nick Porchinski has reviewed and approved for council consideration.
Can I make a statement before we do a call on this? It used to be that we had a moratorium because it was constantly frozen and it was difficult to manage the settlement and reclosure of the streets, but that doesn't seem to be the case given this environment that we're in these days. So we for next year, we might want to consider reviewing whether we want a moratorium or not.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments? No? Good, Betsy?
I'm good.
All right, with that being said, may I have a motion to approve the above requests?
Motion.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, I think we're good. Next up is public comment on agenda items. Is there anyone in the public that has any comments, whether they be on Zoom or in the gallery?
If you're on Zoom, you can raise your hand if you have a public comment on agenda items, and I'll recognize you.
No, we're nothing on agenda items. Okay, if anyone missed out there.
Here comes Councilwoman Christopher Keys have joined us. She's on. I can see her as a panelist. And Meg, you want to say hello so everyone knows you can hear us and we can hear you?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We're good.
Hi, Meg.
Hi.
All right, so next up is the approval of minutes. May I have a motion to approve the November 22nd regular and executive session meeting minutes?
Motion.
Second.
We get a roll call, Allison, please.
Councilmembers Christner Key,
Yes.
Hodge,
Yes.
McCabe,
Yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to old business. Does anyone have any old business they would like to discuss?
I have no old business.
Yep.
I'm good.
Okay, new business. Let's start with Councilwoman Neff, Finance.
Just reporting shortly, the finance committee continues to meet on a bi-monthly basis. And we have met with the heads of most of the departments to talk about their needs over the next 2 to 3 years. We have also started talking about our debt load and needs, as well as, starting to prepare for thinking about the budget for next year. So we are rolling. I think, there have been a lot of good discussions, but nothing major to report on that.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman Neff. Councilwoman Christner Keefe, if you can hear me, personnel.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you, Mayor. The only update on personnel, which is pretty big deal, is tonight on the consent agenda, we have the personnel manuals and handbooks, including volunteer policies. The entire governing body has been given a copy of that to review. The personnel committee has reviewed it, made some edits, and this has been coming at us at the direction of our Mel, or is it our JIF, Teresa? No, it's our Mel.
It's a GIF with the Mel overlay, Meg.
Thank you. So there we go. And so we've been in need of an updated handbook for a while, and this will be wonderful for all of our borough employees, volunteers, electeds, appointeds, to have some direct guidance in every circumstances that may come up throughout the course of their tenure, volunteering, or during their employment. So hopefully everybody's had a chance to review that, and we look forward to putting that into play and spreading it around as soon as we are able.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Yep, that's it from personnel. Thank you.
Meg, would you mind possibly briefing on the manual after it's in place, maybe the second meeting in January? Just so that for the benefit of new council members and also for the public?
Of course. Yeah, I think the intention is as reorganization happens at the beginning of the year, it's a great opportunity for all of anybody who participates in borough activities to be aware of the policies and procedures in place in case they need them, and to receive a copy of the manual. So we'll be reviewing them in more detail at that point in time. But in my opinion, every year upon reorganization, it's a great opportunity to just mention again, the manual, and make sure that everybody's aware of the policies that they're required to abide by and adhere to. Because, most of us, except for our borough employees, are volunteers. We do this because we love Fairhaven, and it's important that we have, again, policies, procedures, and in place, so that when things may go awry, we all know where to turn for direction and what steps to take. So yes, Council President, I look forward to reviewing those in more detail after they've been put through on a resolution, hopefully tonight. And then, as with anything, living, breathing document, should we need to change it or amend it down the road, or there's other great ideas to incorporate, we can certainly consider and make those changes.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Planning and zoning, and then we'll follow that with Parks, Rec, and Communications. Councilwoman Koch.
Thank you, Mayor. The next zoning board meeting will be held on January 6th. It'll be part of their reorganization. Our next planning board meeting will be tomorrow night at Borough Hall in person, and it will be a presentation by M&M Realty for preliminary and final site plan approval for construction of a 3-story building containing 4,250 square feet of commercial space on the ground floor, 14 residential units on the second and third floors, construction of ancillary parking, utilities, and other appurtenances within the affordable housing zone. And in terms of Parks and Recreation, the Holiday House Decorating Contest begins tonight. Participating houses and instructions on how to vote can be found on the Recreation website. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Moving on to Police, Fire, and Office of Emergency Management, followed by Engineering and DPW. Councilman McHugh.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick note, I want to thank the fire department for hosting Santa Claus last Sunday, yesterday. Very successful. And of course, the holiday celebration. For police, this happened a little while ago. I think it was like a month ago, the report came out, Fairhaven was listed. And please excuse me, as a historian, I don't have my sources right now at hand, but I believe one report was we were 52nd safest town in the country. And another report, I think we're like 60 or something like that. Nevertheless, it's amazing when we're talking about throughout the country. And similar to like our safe streets, like I said, we do a lot of this. We get credit for it, but it's not the end goal. We should continue to try to continuously push for a safer community. So it's nice to be recognized, but also we can do more. Also recently, I want to thank the police department for the increased presence with that recent statewide threat to our schools. And thank you for cooperation on behalf of the Board of Education and our police department. That's it for that. And engineering DPW, we had our bi-monthly week or meeting. Main topic of discussion was leaf collection. I know this is a topic around town. We've been hearing a lot from our residents. First and foremost, we did start off a little shorthanded with our loader was out of commission with an issue, so that kind of slowed us up. But hats off to the DPW staff for working extra hard. They're working overtime. They are actually still on schedule, even as daunting as the task may appear with all the leaves. We are still on schedule, which is nice. And I just want to formally recognize that we hear some of the residents' suggestions about additional leaf collections, and we will be looking into that. And just a reminder to the public, leaf collection is just leaves. If by any chance some brush or pumpkins or any other debris happen to contaminate that load, that sends our cost for disposal, I think, threefold. And our leaf collection goes to a farm, it is recycled. So please be cognizant to just keep leaves in the leaf piles. Brush is a separate collection.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Can you put straw, the hay bales in the leaf piles? Somebody asked me that question today.
I was wondering about that. I don't have an answer.
That's generally considered yard waste, I think, and it's not legal.
Not
Okay,
leaves.
so that would go with brush.
And actually, usually, we put it, when we do yard waste, it's generally in the spring, because people tend to clean out their gardens and stuff. In the fall, it's a little more problematic, because we'd have to go to a completely separate vendor. It's not brush, it's not leaves, it's its own entity. I'll turn over to Rich, let him jump into it.
Compost. I need ground to get green.
Rich, is anything to ask that?
I know in the past, we were able to kind of mix it in with the leaves and a lot of folks cut their grasses, the decorative grasses, bury them in the leaves. I think an email just came out this week. Because we had to go to a different disposal site this year. The rules are a little tighter, so they just want leaves, they don't want that other yard waste. So that's why we've been getting some feedback from some of the residents on why we not picking some of that up. But to Teresa's point, that's usually more of a spring. In the spring, what we do is there's a lot of mixed stuff on the streets, and we'll pick that up, put it in a separate truck, and bring that out to a separate disposal. Place. Obviously, cost is a factor of that. It's a higher cost to get rid of that. So try to keep that to the minimum. That we do that in the spring.
We have to cart it away.
They have to take it away
That's what it
themselves.
sounds like.
So
I just wanted to ask, I saw questions on Facebook about walking going pile. in the leaf file. And I'm wondering whether it's worth just sending out a Facebook communications or something else, posting it somewhere just so that people see it. Because I think I saw at least 2 or 3 different questions on things that can go in the file.
In the
In
lead
the
files.
last- Yeah, in the last couple weeks.
I would think generally, Engineer Gardella, feel free to chime in on this, but especially this year, scrambling to find a new vendor because our last vendor was shut down. Let's just, the safe course of action would be just keep it strictly leaves for now, because I'm sure being new, we'll be going through it all. Don't want to lose our place to recycle them.
And I think also from that meeting, I think we're going to you'll be taking a deeper dive into looking at the overall schedule. So I know we did a very basic, should we keep pickup this month versus that month? But I think the outcry from the community has been, this schedule really needs to be looked at. So a piece of that would be the communication as well. But I think there needs to be a total deep dive into the manpower. Is the manpower being utilized across the year? Is it a heavy lift at certain times? It's just a big process. It's, in my opinion, it's not just saying, should we just move one pickup from May to October to double up towards, the fall or something. I think that there really needs to be a lot more looked at when it comes to some of this work for the DPW. And I think it's only in fairness to the DPW as well, as they're put into overtime and things like that. And I'm talking very generally, but I always keep talking about the strategic plan. I think this is a big piece of the strategic plan. These are tactics that we're talking about. We need an overall plan, not just for the borough itself. We've talked about the vision for the borough and say the 52nd safest towns. That's a pillar of it. What are we going to do? What needs to be done to increase us, and why aren't we number 1? And I'm just saying that, hypothetically, but what do we need to do to get number 1? And it's just not safe streets. Something more has to be in this plan. And I, apologize, I haven't really dug deep into it. But again, I'm hoping that we see a strategy for the borough. What's our vision? What's our strategy? And then what are the pillars? And then what are the tactics that are just going to drive this?
Yeah, and just to be clear, there is a plan, the process. I don't
Yeah.
know if Engineer Gardella shared that with you. Kind of a blueprint on how we go about collecting for the town right now, but that kind of base plan we're going to look at, and Mayor Hepburn and I are looking to get some more community input early spring, and just democratize the process and let the good ideas flow to the top, and that way we can have some ownership and just be pragmatic about it and see. Okay, this is what we've been doing. We do this a little bit differently, like main arteries to schools, that kind of stuff. Like, can we evaluate certain streets to a different level and look at?
Right. And maybe if that's accelerated a little bit, because the springtime, if you have commitments with contracts or if you have other commitments, springtime may be a little bit late. I don't know. I'm just suggesting.
I set a calendar placeholder, I believe, for February, if I'm not mistaken.
February.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I've said enough. Thank you.
I just want to add, it really has to do with the disposal site this year. They're only accepting leaves. Typically, people would mix pumpkins in their corn stalks, the grasses they cut, the decorative grasses. So we took this picture either late last week or even today to send to our guys collecting, just so they know this is an example of that's something we can't pick up, because we were actually notified by the farm. So that's your typical yard waste, but in years past, yes, it gets mixed in, it gets composted at that site, but no longer acceptable.
So what happens with that now, Rich? Do you go
And
back to the
that's just,
homeowner?
well, it's a function too. The last site got shut down because of DEP, so they were not following the rules and regulations, and it's very specific, leaf composting, etc. So
And so are you knocking on the door of the resident and letting them know? How does that actually work out as a process?
I mean, if we see them, we'll talk to them. The individual that usually handles that is out on medical leave right now, so we're trying to, we're doing the best we can. The guys that are raking and on the ground try to talk to the residents and get the word out as best they can, but
It goes, So just one thing, it goes in the garbage pail and all of that will biodegrade in the landfill.
So
So
who puts in the garbage pail? The
the
homeowner?
homeowner,
That's not actually,
Yeah.
that's not, if
a
you.
pumpkin,
No, if you send a pumpkin into a landfill, landfills are designed so things don't, so they'll pull up hot dogs 50 years later, it looks like a hot dog still. That's why, anything that gets sent to a landfill is most likely not gonna compost unless it's composting in that 3 to 5 day window where it hasn't been covered and sealed, and, they have to do that to keep all the gases in.
well, we've been telling residents put their pumpkins in the garbage. Because they don't go in
Yeah.
recycling and they don't go in the leaf.
Well, they're still gonna
They have to
end
go
up,
somewhere.
they're still gonna end up in the garbage, but I'm just saying the likelihood of them actually composting in a normal landfill is unlikely.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, because I think you both said it very eloquently, and I want to also say the DPW, as far as the plan that we have now, and some of the challenges we've had on this cycle of leaves, is doing a fantastic job. They've had machines broken down, as we said, enforcement, the gentleman is out on leave right now. We're dealing with the county road being shut down as well, which makes it harder to move around, and the leaves put out on that road as well. But getting back to the original thought is, we do recognize that there's an issue here. We're working on solving it. We're going to continue working on solving it and making it better. And if there's input from the community that you can share with us that you think is helpful in, moving that process forward, please share it with us. We're the governing body is listening. So we thank the community for your patience this go around, and we're going to work to make it better in the spring. So,
Thank you.
If I may just follow up, it rung a bell, with my other liaison to green team, one of the members is actively researching composting, and the early numbers are something about 30% of waste to be saved through composting. So I'm looking forward to hearing the report on that. And that's real dollars with tipping fees and everything going up for the town. If we can look at other ways that help the environment, but also can help save us money. It's something that we can educate people on doing. That would be great win for the town, to help save us some money as well.
thank you, Councilman. Councilman Rodriguez, Borough Facilities.
I was not at the last meeting because we had some scheduling juggling going on, so I defer to Mr. McHugh or yourself. If you guys made the meeting, I was not at the meeting.
You want to take it, Mayor?
So,
Yeah, I mean, it was not a lengthy meeting. We did go over some of what we already discussed with the Bicentennial Hall and the report that we got from the Historic Commission. And we talked about, some owners agents and some of the committee members are looking at in detail to try to coordinate those services with those of the architect, so we can come forward with with a recommendation at the time when that's necessary.
Yeah, so what was that again with the bicentennial hall? We're gonna look back and check with
Well, the bottom line is the Bicentennial Hall, that the Historic Commission did give us their feedback. They're very supportive of the project in general, but at the end of the day, they're not, at this point, supportive of fixed days, no matter where it goes. So the thought was that we would move forward with the ADA upgrades to that building, which would include the parking lot and the ramp and the bathrooms, and then we would, once that was done, we'll look to work with the Historic Commission to see what we can do as far as a dais. If at that time the governing body is still committed to holding meetings there, we have a suggestion that we try to hold a meeting there. In the meantime, we may look to have our second meeting in January there, provided we're not back to virtual, depending on how COVID keeps, spiking. That remains a possibility for everyone, I think. So, once we get to that point, then we'll try a meeting there and see how it works out conceptually speaking. I think we got plenty of time to work with the Historic Commission. They're very willing to work with the governing body members and facilities committee. They have it in mind that we can have like a rolling dais that you just roll up and use and then roll aside if you don't need it. But we still have ADA considerations regardless, so we have to, look at that in some, in some detail in the future.
And I believe the architect is close to finishing up the plans, and they're also working on the scope of services on a owner's rep, correct?
Not the architect, we are, the. red sheet.
Right, correct.
And then, and as soon as we have any type of a final, estimate, from the architect, we'll share that first with facility committee, then we'll go with that.
One last item for next year, really for next facilities committee is the project labor agreement concept. The county uses them often. I believe they use them for the 911 call center, the prosecutor's office, the county vehicle facility, washing facility, and a number of other projects. Any project over $5 million is and 5 million can leverage a PLA. It's not something I'm prepared to recommend. I want to talk to the facilities committee about it, but I want to talk to the rest of the council people about the pros and cons and what it really means and the quality of the outcome. If we're going to spend money to upgrade our DPW and to replace and also replace DPW, but also the police department, we want a quality outcome. We don't want to have all the bad things that happen when you don't have the right folks on the job. So that's coming down the pipe.
Thank you, Councilman. Moving on to the consent agenda resolutions. 2021-247, approved purchase authorization, small ticket capital. 2021-251, executive session, personnel, possible litigation and contract negotiations.
Mayor, did you want to add?
The police FICA
Social Security.
settlement to that, it's not on there, but
Something came
we
late
got
this
some in
afternoon.
late today, something on that.
All right, can we do that?
We can, just have to say with the addition of.
I would like to do that with the addition of
Like a
Got
discussion.
2021-252, approve agreement with Prime Point LLC for payroll services. 2021-253, approve 2021 budget transfers. 2021-254, approve fourth quarter tax overpayment refund, 43 Woodland Drive. 2021-255, approve street opening cash repair deposit, 29 Dogwood Lane. 2021-256, set council reorganization meeting date, January 3rd, 2022. And 2021-257, approve various personnel and volunteer policies, manuals, and handbooks. And last but not least, 2021-258, payment of vouchers. Do I have an offer?
Mayor, can I ask a
Sure.
point of clarification? Councilwoman Keefe, are you still
She has her hand up.
here?
I'm with you. Yep, I'm here.
Okay, can I ask a question? I don't know who
Sure.
can answer this, but in the manual and handbook, there's no pages listed, but it's under educational assistance and training policy.
Yeah, you're right. There are no page numbers.
Right above.
But pages will be listed before we
I
finalize.
figured, yeah, when you finalize it, you put the pages. Above conference and seminar policy, I'll just read it real quick, because I just,
Sure.
as a point of clarification, it says employees may apply for tuition expenses to be incurred for training, continuing education units necessary for certification, or college courses directly related to the employee's work. Then later it goes on to say the borough administrators, sole judge of whether the course or program is quote directly related to the employee's work. So my main question is regarding college courses, because then at the end, it says the employee is required to reimburse the borough for any tuition expenses paid for courses that led to a New Jersey state certificate or license whenever the employee voluntarily leaves the borough within 18 months of passing the individual course or obtaining the final New Jersey state certificate or license. that last clause regarding certificate of licenses, does that apply to college credits as well if you're just going for your degree?
That's a good question. Trying to find it in the manual so I can read the language. I know that you read it, but it's harder to evaluate without putting my own eyes on it.
Or, I'm sorry, in like a,
I will say, as a matter of course, only people who have either a contract or a separate agreement with the borough would pay for college courses. One would be under an employment agreement we have with an employee, and the other would be part of a resolution that we recently passed for another employee. I wouldn't approve a college course, certainly. First of all, there has to be money in the budget for it.
yeah,
So, the governing body remains the driving force on whether or not that would happen. And, we put the language in there about the certifications because it's something the governing body had talked about previously, wanting to be sure that if we paid for a certification, whether it's for any license, pick a license, that we, QPA or any of the other ones, that we got reimbursed if the person left for them. As far as that, and so that's why we added that one.
yeah. But college courses are included. So I
I didn't change that language. That's the same language that was in our current policy manual. I only added the piece below for the reimbursement because.
which I think is good. I just, by all means, Betsy and I were both educators, we value education and, support our employees to further themselves through education, and that's college as well. It just, when it's mentioned in the beginning of the paragraph, and then college courses aren't mentioned at the end of the paragraph, I would just hate for us to invest in our employees with college and then have that be kind of a.
Can we adopt it with after license, put college class and just so that insert that into the same sentence?
That would make sense to me.
Where it says,
The employees are covered
certification
for-
or license or college courses,
Yeah,
and that way it just kind of wraps it up and starts a
that's
college.
fine. I have no problem. I'll make a note of that, and before we print the final on this, I'll add that.
Thank you. So, is that okay then?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else before?
Well, on that note, I'd say, this is a living document. We'll continue to update these policies, so this isn't our last bite at the apple. We'll constantly be putting things into this, so it could be amended next meeting if we wanted to do that, so just keep that in mind.
Anyone else before we move to an offer on the consent agenda? That's good.
That's something, Mayor.
Yes.
Teresa, I think you'll know the answer to this one. On Prime Point, it says it was revised on December 15th. What was the revision?
The only revision was that he said his original quote said it had to be approved in 2021. He said it had to be implemented in 2021. I put it out so we weren't going to implement it in 2022, so he changed it, that's all. He changed the
Okay.
date.
Okay, so that was the only change to that Prime Point proposal. Great, thank you. That's all.
We have an offer on the consent agenda.
Motion.
Second,
Roll call, Allison, please.
Councilmember Commissioner Keith,
Yes.
Buck,
yes.
McCabe.
Yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Net,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to department reports, November 2021, Borough Clerk, dog license, tax collector, police department, and budget status. Do I have a motion to accept the reports as submitted?
Motion.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, before we move on to go to the borough, I just want to make a quick statement. Thanking the borough staff, the police department, the fire department, Office of Emergency Management, paramedics, basically anyone that has anything to do with touching this borough for making this a successful 2021 as we look forward to 2022. That includes the residents. Thank you for all the input that you've given us this year, and obviously my 2 short months that I've been here, but this governing body up here, they're all volunteers, and I want to say You all did an exceptional job, and I'm very, very thankful for the time that you all put into this. You know, we're looking forward to Councilwoman Cole being up on the dais, starting in January. And with that, I just want to personally, and on behalf of everyone, also thank Councilwoman McCabe. You know, you stepped up this year, you did a fantastic job. The borough owes you a debt of gratitude for doing so. And we all look forward to your success with the RFH Board of Education and watching what wonderful things you do there. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you to all of you as well for welcoming me, your support. I'm looking forward to having Councilman Cole sit here with your expertise and all the expertise that you bring. I just think that we're going to flourish as a community. I think, you know, what is it, pull your bootstraps up. I think there's a lot of work that we're going to do in 2022, myself from the community aspect and just watching all of you. So thanks so much for everything that you all do. You know, I truly have an appreciation now sitting here and seeing behind the scenes. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. It's been a learning experience. I've grown. And I just want to thank you all and have a wonderful, wonderful Christmas season and Happy New Year to you all. But I will be watching from afar.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Next up is go to the borough. Please stand and identify yourself by stating your name and address for the record. If possible, please observe a time limit of 3 minutes. Is there anyone present that would like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to raise awareness, you know, I tuned into the news just before coming out tonight, and there's this serious concern around COVID. The rates of infection have tripled in the last week, tripled. It's astonishing. And I know everyone is aware of this. I just feel like we're entering winter holidays across the, you know, yet another year of this, but the winter is usually hardest. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because there are a lot of public meetings and we have a very engaged public. The community is very involved in the processes. So I know that many people are opting to not attend meetings. And they're grateful for the fact that they think that there's a hybrid option for council. That's not the case for the planning board. I think the zoning board is making a decision. I guess the environmental, but there are a lot of boards, commissions, committees, and some of which the public would like to participate in. Of a significant note, tomorrow planning board meeting. Many members of the public would like to participate, but feel that they would be contributing to a problem in that COVID is tricky right now. Nobody wants to transmit or be part of, you know, get sick and go home, get your family sick. So I just wanted to probably just get it on the record. I don't know what all the other boards and commissions have planned, but make communication from the governing body. It's just a form of right to ask them what their plans are. So that they can perhaps consider either hybrid or virtual options so that the public has a way of participating ongoing, even if the infection rate gets worse, which it does look like going to happen. I just wanted to bring that here tonight for your consideration. I realize all the boards have their own, set their own agendas and their own schedule, but it seems worth making a note of it tonight.
Sure. Thank you, Tracy. And I think most of the boards have Zooms where the public can participate. I know the planning board does not for tomorrow night. That might be a creature of, we need to advertise.
I met with the planning board secretary today, and you know, the planning and zoning boards are unique because there's the notice issue and the presentation of evidence issue and all of that. I do know to the best of my knowledge, the zoning board attorney doesn't feel that a hybrid meeting is appropriate, that we have, you know, so sticking with the Zoom is a better platform in that regard. And we certainly talked about the fact that if they're going to make a decision to change for January, watching the COVID numbers come in, that there has to be a date certain in which they make that decision for the noticing perspective. You know, some of our other committees that were teetering on going live that have been virtual, like environmental for argument's sake. Now I think they're moving back to wanting to stay virtual because of what Tracy just mentioned. You know, I personally think, you know, we've said this before, you know, nobody's anxious to go through round 2 of this, and as painful as it is, you know, we even have to take a long, hard look at Borough Hall and our operations here. There was a period of time where, you know, we were closed to the public, you know, and we run a very small operation here, and an outbreak in this could drive these operations to a halt pretty quickly. You know, our staff's vaccinated, but we've seen a lot of breakthrough cases in that count. So, you know, I'm going to keep a very close eye on it, and certainly listening, we want to input from all of you and from members of the public. But, you know, it would not surprise me if we had to redouble our efforts and sort of go back to those early days in, you know, 2020, you know, maybe, you know, when we got into, you know, June, July, you know, we have the option for some of our staff to work remotely if need be. But my first line of defense would be to close again to the public and have everything, you know, done in the form of a drop off or, you know, or via phone or computer or whatever the case may be. And then when it comes to meetings, I don't think, you know, it would be a bad idea to, unless we see some real changes, you know, we come into this new year, to say that we would be inclined to go with back to the Zoom platform for all of our boards and things, at least until, I heard a stat that they expected, you know, COVID to double in non-vaccinated people in the first quarter of this year. And that's kind of frightening when you think about it. And then-
If I may say, I would fully support that idea, just because I think it's strange to have the zoning board on Zoom and the planning board in person and us on a hybrid. I just think it makes it more difficult for the public to participate because it's 3 different formats. I mean, I like coming here, and I think it's different when we are seeing each other. But I think from the perspective of the public and, you know, the age of a number of people who actually do participate in our meetings, I could see that you really preclude them from participating going forward unless we move to Zoom, or we have a situation that we can guarantee a hybrid approach. Like, you know, like, for example, I think tomorrow's meeting for the planning board is quite important. It would be a shame if people cannot participate. I don't know if there's any opportunity to switch it to Zoom, but
There is
No,
not,
there's not enough time to notice it.
This
That's part of the
juncture
problem.
now.
can we, and we can also not notice a hybrid, like we cannot have this owl here.
No, you would have noticed it prior, according to the attorney, would have had noticed that prior to this as part of the.
And our hybrid is borrowed from the Board of Education, so somewhere a little bit leery till we get our own,
Our own on order.
which I was gonna say.
It's like anything else. On order is you know, it's on order. That's all I can tell you.
Just anecdotally, I would share that. I've got a lot of people reach out to me about the meeting, and they feel like they can't come because of this room, the compactness, and the number of people that may. We don't know how many people are going to come, but they know it's an important issue for the town. They want to come because they know it's significant, but they feel like it would be dangerous. That's it's denying the public the opportunity to participate in a public hearing. And it's unfortunate that this important matter should coincide with things just were so dramatically in the last week. I understand the notice issues, but I wonder if there isn't at least a hybrid.
Or delay,
It's unprecedented,
or
right?
delay of
So-
the meeting, or delay the meeting, because
Right.
it is an unusually important meeting. If it was any other regular meeting, I would say, like a homeowner and the zoning board that really is like 5 people may have an interest. That's an unusually important meeting. So I don't know if that's possible, but I
I'm going
would.
to yield to the borough attorney here. I mean, there are,
Planning board meeting?
yeah, and
We don't get.
They're autonomous.
they're autonomous, and they're also very.
And we have members here that are part of it, but. We have, you know.
And there are very tight time constraints, you know, that they have to stick to certain dates. And calling the applicant, you know, tomorrow to say, you know, the meeting's off, you know, could have its own repercussions. Could I email the chair of the planning board and then the attorneys and our fair share attorney and say that there's, you know, concern that, you know, due to the spike in COVID, that we're not being fair to the public? Could, whether or not that, you know, would hold any weight with getting the applicant to pull their application is, you know.
I think what you're hearing, Tracy, is this governing body can't specifically do something about changing the meeting. And that's up to the planning board. So, you know, we appreciate the feedback and we understand where you're coming from, but I think you need to also provide that feedback directly to the planning board.
What did I will do that.
Yeah.
What would you tell a neighbor or a fellow resident who's asking me, how can I participate, what should I do?
It's, you know, I'm not sure I'm the one to give that specific guidance.
What I would tell them is, I think it's extremely doubtful that it's going to take place, it's going to be completed, the application tomorrow. That meeting will be, you know, on tape. And they can listen to the tape and then participate in the next meeting, which would either be, even the planning board secretary will talk about, you know, what are the chances that, you know, there'll be so many people here tomorrow that they couldn't hold the meeting. You know, in some meetings, they change to an alternate venue, but once again, they have to postpone the meeting and then re-advertise it for an alternate venue in the future.
That's probably something we should be seriously consider, but I will take it up with the planning board. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Does anyone else have their hand up? Teresa?
Mayor,
so
I'm sorry, I have my hand up. I just wanted to respond to Tracy Cole. Thank you for raising that. I just want to say more broadly, perhaps it would be helpful if we had a uniform way that we were approaching meetings and had some more consistency. I know, you know, we've successfully been using the OWL now for a couple of months, and perhaps there's a way to integrate that for more of the committees and boards to utilize. I know some groups meet exclusively on Zoom. Some seem to change and flip-flop over time as things change with COVID, but maybe we should have some central way of knowing what groups meet and how, and or having a uniform set way. Just something for consideration more broadly, because I agree, you know, the point Ms. Cole brought up is specific to new circumstances and a particularly important meeting for some, but just on a grander, broader scale, it's important that everybody has access. So we should make sure that we are able to give people the information that they need and that we have a standard way of operating in terms of how meetings are hosted, so that, you know, people can be there, whether it's virtually or in person.
Yeah, I agree. And Meg, I'm just going to point out, I'm trying to think about where this is, and it kind of falls under communication. I mean, it's communication to the residents in the borough and how community outreach and how we give and take. So perhaps it's something that we take a look at in the new year for whoever's in that role. I'll just mention that.
But I will slightly, I guess, question the idea that the planning board and other boards are independent bodies. I think
Planning and zoning are, not all the others.
I would imagine that the mayor and the council could request to all the boards very strongly to consider changing their format so that we have a unified format, and I'll suggest we decide what that is and essentially send that messaging out, because I would imagine they would follow
Which
along.
we can suggest it. I think what they're saying is if they don't want to listen to us, they don't have to.
I
That's
also,
what
I'm
I'm sure
going
we
to
can.
yield to Greg, but you might be able to tie it to something like the active COVID cases in Monmouth County. If they hit a certain level, then all meetings have to be Zoom, or I don't know, but
Yeah, I mean, they're of course take you, I'm sure they'll take your guidance. You guys are the governing body. I mean, the question before was specifically into tomorrow night, where there's already a notice issued well within the 10 days. And it's not, not our board, not our application, right? There's more than one party than just us. So, you have to provide them the resources that, I don't know how many hours you need, that sort of thing. Of course, there's a connection between the two. With respect to tomorrow night, there's really not a lot. We can't direct the planning board to have the meeting.
And they,
Actually, wouldn't be appropriate, honestly.
if they feel uncomfortable due to COVID having the meeting, they still have to move forward.
I mean,
They
that
can cancel.
depends on what the applicant
It's up
says,
to,
right? So.
they didn't have a reason for canceling a meeting,
Yeah.
like they had a lack of quorum, or they had, something along those lines, like Jan, I'd have to yield to.
I'm asking if this is a reason to cancel a meeting. That's my question.
That's more.
I mean, so the difficulty in answering that question, the reason I said we really don't have control over that is like, I don't know what the applicant's gonna do, right? So the applicant might object to adjourning the hearing for that reason. If they do that, then we'll be making some legal arguments, and your lawyer will be discussing or
excuse me, the planning board's lawyer will be discussing with the other applicant. So for me to predict what would happen is just impossible sitting this
And I could
It's
email.
not our control functionally.
I could email them tonight, after the meeting and tell them that, the governing body has concerns and would they reach out to the applicant tomorrow and see if they were willing to postpone the meeting, we could certainly do that.
Did we decide that?
No, I'm just saying, if that's what you want me to do, I certainly could do that.
I think the board should decide what's appropriate for them. And if we want to make a unilateral decision, we need input, we need data, we need a reason, we need to discuss it, and doing it
You're not gonna have
on
that
a
by
5-minute conversation here doesn't seem appropriate to me. There's not a lot of data here. That's my opinion.
And we also wouldn't want to thwart the applicant's rights. That's the other side of this coin. So there's two of those considerations, both the public's ability to attend and then the applicant's rights. But again, I think this might be outside our purview if it's planning board.
It sounds like it's on the planning board to,
I'm sorry, my comment was really related to like going forward, more, like
That's the plan for
providing
everybody.
direction going forward.
okay.
That's the plan. Shade Tree is on board. It was just, we had a few things we needed to tweak and fix with this owl with Chris. We finally got it to where it needs to be. We now have a secretary, Christy Larson, for environmental and shade tree. She's on board. Also Sandy Papa for historic. They're just waiting for us to get our equipment to move forward. They're on board. Planning and zoning, you've already discussed.
Teresa, anyone else with their hand up?
Yes, first up is Chris Hempstead. I'm going to go ahead and recognize Chris. Go ahead, Chris.
Hello. Yeah, how are you, everyone? Chris Hempstead, 53 Willow Street, Fairhaven. Listen, in reference to what you were just talking about, I can't stress enough. One thing that this council has been time and time again to consider is getting ahead of sensitive issues, getting ahead of it before it becomes a major problem and people become frustrated. And everyone on this council, at some point or another, has agreed that, yes, that is exactly what we're going to do, right? But here we are, once again, in a situation where we have a massive facility going up, setting a precedent for possibly a downtown area that looks exactly like Red Bank or Long Branch, okay, which is not what people in this town want, right? We have a situation where we're about to embark on that we have the opportunity to let people know what's going on. Now, I understand that notice has been given, and I understand that people have a responsibility to go and look at this information that's available online, but God's honest truth is they don't, and that's on them, right? Most of the people anyway won't show up at the meeting, but not having the ability to have the meeting online and not encouraging that, at least during this pandemic. This was brought up during the November meeting. This was brought up for the November planning board meeting. Why isn't it Zoom available? And nothing was done. And here we are a month later, right? So this again is when things change in this town and everyone comes back at the council, you volunteers who are giving your time so generously and attack you. Why did this happen? How did this happen? It's exactly what's going on tonight. No one has the guts to stand up and say, absolutely not. Let's go back to freehold. Let's go back to the state and let's ask for a stay. And let's look at this again, because clearly the intent of the fair share housing plan is not for some developer to come in and build 10 2-bedroom, high valuation luxury units to sell and subsidize 2 affordable housing units with a commercial zone underneath. Because if that's the intent of the plan, you do not need to put it in the most heavily and densely populated part of our downtown. You can put that on the river because you can sell it. And that wasn't told to us when this was shoved down our throat. The council didn't mention that it was going to be 12 units, 2 of which were affordable and 10 of which were going to be probably high 6-figure, possibly low 7-figure units. Okay. Because that's, generally the economics of it. So here's the council with an opportunity to say, hold on a minute, let's take a time out and let's look at this because people are concerned. And by the way, for some reason, the planning board refuses to have an online meeting or a hybrid meeting. It's really weird and strange. And I raise a red flag to that. I think you all brought up great points tonight on this, and I think the discussion needs to be continued, but unfortunately, it may be too late, but I remind you that this council is constantly challenged about trying to get ahead of the curve, and we fail and fail and fail. So here we are again with a major change to this town, with an opportunity to do something. Let's do it. Take a stand. And I'm done.
Chris, can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
At the planning board, when it was discussed about either going virtual or using a hybrid, the borough attorney, not the borough attorney, sorry, the planning board attorney, Doug Kovacs, recommended we do either virtual or in person. He discouraged the planning board against going hybrid. So the planning board took his recommendation, and that's why we're still doing in person.
And who questioned that? Because it seems awkward to me from someone who, commutes whenever I can, but when I'm told to stay home, I do. Right. But would nobody question that? Does anyone question the attorney? Did anyone look into the affairs of the attorney? Why would they suggest such a thing during a pandemic? That, by the way, every expert at the NHA and the CDC has said they expected things to spike this winter. Why would a government employee or a borough employee or someone who's contracted specifically recommend that they want in person in a time where everyone in America is discouraging it? I got a problem with that. I gotta be honest with you. That's weird.
Chris, I appreciate all of your comments. I recognize how passionate you are about the subject. Can I just ask you specifically, because you hit a lot of points there, are you just trying to focus in on the fact that it's not on Zoom tomorrow night, or are you looking at a greater picture that you're looking to discuss with this governing body right now?
Well, I mean, it's a fair question, and I think for a starting point, yes, not being on Zoom does raise a bit of caution, because I think the matter before the planning board is of great interest personally to me. I suspect it's of great interest to a lot of people currently, and I suspect also that if things go the way I think they're going to go, I think people in this town are going to be very upset that they didn't know about it. I gotta be honest with you, and that's on them. Look, it's not. I mean, you've done nothing wrong. This council has done nothing wrong, and Teresa and the rest of the the employees have done everything right in making the information available on the borough website. I get that, but look, I mean, some of this requires a bit of due diligence on the citizens and spreading the word and saying, hey, look, there's something really important coming before this borough, and without voting for or against or opining on for or against, it could have great significant implication on the character of our downtown. And I think people really need to pay attention to this. It's incredibly important. Look, the little benefit you get from fighting off affordable housing could easily be offset by a degradation in property valuations if this town goes to 3 stories high all up and down Main Street. Okay, because I'll tell you what, the value of the surrounding properties is going to go downhill pretty fast. The schools are going to be absolutely overrun with the little bit of increase that they're going to get. But it's a tough pill to swallow with, sorry, you have to show up in person. And it's a big deal. It's a big thing to consider. So I don't want to share with you and say, I don't want to say one way or another I'm for or against. I think I lean one way, and you can probably read it. I have concerns. I certainly probably lean heavily on, is there a legal opportunity that we can engage in to hit the pause button and take another look at this? Have we done enough as a borough in good faith to afford ourselves a hit of the pause button and taking another look? Can we ask the state for that? Because I don't know what's going on in Rumson or Shrewsbury or Little Silver or Seabright for that matter, but I suspect that we may be able to ask. I don't know.
I would say, Chris, this is Chris Rodriguez. Betsy and I worked on this probably for 2.5 years. I really don't know how long it's been. It seems like 10, but it's not. The alternative is builder remedy lawsuits if we back out of this agreement. The pause, I don't think, is actually a legal procedure that we can engage in. We agreed to this plan. It's not 8 stories, it's not 6 stories. I know that doesn't sound great to you. We kept it to what we think was the most reasonable level that we could for the character of our town. I know you and I discussed the overlay zone. You had an idea that we could put it elsewhere. The realities of that is that the state wouldn't have approved other locations just because the cost would have prohibited development and would have been an unworkable plan. So at the end of the day, we negotiated with our attorney and our city planners to try to get the best deal we could. And this is currently the best deal that we have. It's not the only deal, because in 4 years or whenever the time expires, we're gonna have to go back to the table again. And if this one didn't work, it may actually get worse. So I'm not, I think this law is flawed. I think the ruling is flawed. It's really not built for a small town like ours, but it's one size fits all. And we're gonna work hard next time around to get the best deal that we can for our town. I'd love to hear if Betsy, if you want to say anything else.
I have one more thing.
Sure, go
real
ahead,
quick. Chris, just, you mentioned these were condos. They're not condos, I don't believe. I believe they're rental units. Yes, go ahead. Sorry for sticking in there.
No, I think, Chris, what you said is actually correct. And while it may be unpleasant, I think we got the best deal possible because it really could have been a lot worse. And we spent a lot of time negotiating with the development company. And Chris, I think you would agree, we probably reached the best resolution with the court's approval that we could for this particular structure.
I appreciate that, especially the amount of work you put into it. And certainly what they could have possibly come at us with. But the one thing, and Chris alluded to it as well, was the cost, addressing the cost. And, the thing that doesn't sit well with me, and I'm certainly, there's no way we can get through it and we'll ever get through it. But what I'll just share with you, if you're curious, what doesn't sit well with me is that, the cost of the property is one thing, but then they're able to mitigate that cost by upgrading the apartments. I'm sorry, not condos, but the apartments to, I'll call them luxury 2-bedroom apartments, because I looked at the layout, I looked at the plan, they're generously spaced. And then the 2 affordable units are clearly, smaller. Like the builder and the owners are going to get their money. They're going to make the return on capital that they need. And whether they pay $1 million for the property or $5 million for the property, they're going to get that back. That's just business. So whether they do it on the river or in the heart of downtown, to me is irrelevant. Because if you put up a 4-story luxury condo building on the river, you just have to satisfy 2 units, right? And make your money in the other 10. And I'm sure they can do that. And that's kind of what doesn't sit well with me, because when we started talking about affordable housing, it was, it felt altruistic, but now it doesn't so much. Now we're just slipping a couple of units into otherwise a high-end apartment building.
Chris, it's Meg. I just want to jump in for a second if I can. So I hear what you're saying, but it's not as simple as that. It's a little bit more complicated. If you recall, there's actually, I don't want to say there's 3 zones, but technically the Sunoco lot is treated separately from the rest of the downtown overlay zone. And that's for a reason. I wasn't on the council at the time. My understanding then and now is that there was a risk of a builder's remedy lawsuit. And for that reason, there was this engaged negotiation as it relates to the Sunoco property. So, no developer is going to say, yes, I will put in 100% fair share. Maybe some would, and maybe if the lawsuit had happened, that would have been their position. I don't know. But there was this engaged negotiation. And if it wasn't that property, it could have been any other property that was asking for development. That could have been the location of a builder's potential builder's remedy lawsuit, I'll say. So on a broader scale, it's more complicated than just we approved a plan with only 2 units. That's not exactly how it went. And
No, I
also
remember.
there
I
are 2 other
agree.
properties on Hendrickson that will be developed as fair share in conjunction with this plan. So it's not just 2, and it's not just in the densely populated area. There's another location in town. Like Councilman Rodriguez said, there will be another evaluation in 5 years of what our requirements are based on our available land. So, you know, it's not so simple. And you made a comment earlier, I just wanted to respond to as well, regarding the fact that this fact that there are a number of units and only 2 of them are for fair share. That information, if I recall, was disclosed during that first fair share plan. I think there was a meeting in March of 19. And I specifically remember that being one of the facts that was shared in the scope of that plan, because it was important. That was one of the key factors that I remember discussing at that meeting. So, you know, I don't, and I'm not saying all this to say you don't have all the information, but I just want, you know, you and anybody else listening to understand that it's just not as simple as us getting exactly what we want. And generally, my understanding of the law is that they don't sanction and support putting 24 fair share units in one location anyway, because then you're really kind of spot zoning and putting all the fair share in one location or area of town. So, you know, just to address those parts of your comments. And of course, you know how to reach me, so you can always reach me offline too.
I appreciate it. No, it's a fair point. I may have missed that back in 2019, you know, but for one thing, maybe what triggered my concern in 2019 when they were talking about the overlay zone, maybe that was it exactly, and saying like, wait a minute, the reason why we don't want to put everything in Asbury Park or Camden is because we want to spread it out, right? But then when you go and spread it out, you decide to choose the most densely affordable parts of the town, which would be the lowest valuations. So it kind of goes right against the whole purpose of it anyway. If that was the intent, then just leave it in Asbury and Camden, right? And instead you're coming, oh, we'll just go to Fairhaven and Rumson, we'll find the most affordable parts of that town, because we don't want to do the most affordable parts of the state. We want to actually make it the most affordable parts of the municipalities instead. Well, okay, it's a start, but it's the same evil in a sense. And I don't know. I mean,
Right,
the builder's going to make.
In this case, that's not how it played out, because it was the threat of the builder's remedy lawsuit that caused, you know, this specific property to have, you know, the zoning in place that it does. So again, you know, we didn't pick that location. That location, you know, happened to raise its hand and say, hey, we're here, we're ready.
Yeah, and Chris, I don't take what I say next as diminishing your passion once again for this, and I understand how much, you know, consideration you've given this and how important it is for the borough. But my understanding is that this is a done deal as far as where the overlay zone is, and
Well, for this plan, we've entered into an agreement with the state.
So you know, ultimately, trying to break down what you're saying, the only thing left here to consider immediately is you know, whether they can have a Zoom for tomorrow night, which goes back to you know, I encourage you to reach out to the planning board and ask them you know, if they want to reconsider. Outside of that, I mean, you know, we're just going over historical data here, and we're all willing to talk to you about it offline, but I'm just not sure how much it's going to accomplish continuing this conversation right here and right now during this
No,
meeting.
you're right. No, I appreciate it, Mayor. Listen, I'm not looking to like to change. You know, I'm sharing my opinion on the overlay zone, and I never agreed with it to begin with, and we'll probably never be on the same page. But it is what it is. I think the economics of the deals, you know, for a builder to come in and do this and build mostly fair market value housing and probably bumped up a bit to pay for it just doesn't sit right with me from a social impact perspective. And again, and again, yeah, you're right, to remind the borough and the council, anyone listening, like, look, we have to speak up. You know, the fact that the planning board can decide to make it, in person only, for a matter as important as this. And then apparently the council has no say in the matter. It's just, it's like we're begging for people to, to bring it up when it's too late. And again, we've covered these things time and time again. How do we let this stuff get so far where there's so much frustration and we can get ahead of it? And everyone has said, let's stay ahead of it. So I guess let's continue to try. I think we missed the vote on this one.
Yes, we value your feedback. I think everyone here has respect for what you're trying to do. And we appreciate your time and your comments. Thank you so much.
I appreciate everyone here, everyone's everyone's work and the voluntary nature of it. It's very much appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Teresa, anyone else?
Next up is Susan O'Brien.
Hi, Susan. How are you?
Go ahead, Susan.
Good evening. As you know, I try to attend as many meetings as possible. Tonight, I've opted to watch on Zoom, just given the COVID situation. I am most interested in the planning board meeting tomorrow night. However, it's in person and they do not mask. Is there any way that you can mandate masks in the building, given the COVID situation at this point?
I have signs on the front and back door asking people to wear masks when they come in Borough Hall. We had them up for a month, and as you know, my whole staff is masked and you guys are all masked. I didn't attend the planning board meetings. I did have someone tell me they weren't using masks. I'd have to ask Betsy if that's the case.
I think what she's asking is, can we mandate a
Yeah,
rule
can you make it mandatory?
that makes it mandatory? And I guess that's,
Suppose everybody can make a rule that it's mandatory to wear masks in Borough Hall, if they so desire tonight.
Yes, you can. Oh, sure, building.
I thought it was mandatory already.
Yeah.
No, it isn't mandatory. That's not what the sign says.
Then I would concur if we make it mandatory.
Sure, let's do that.
Yeah, great. What do we have to do?
how do we achieve that?
You just
That's a
make
resolution.
a
Just
motion.
Change what the sign says?
Well, yeah, but I mean, functionally, you're setting a policy, so you make a motion, you vote on it.
Can we enforce it? Is that the question?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I would say the answer to that is, if someone's without mask in Borough Hall, we'd ask them to leave.
Yeah.
We force the chief, what are you doing tomorrow night?
I think you could, like, you control the building and ask them to leave. You know, we're doing a mask, tell me we're a mask, just like we did before.
We'll have you on speed dial tomorrow.
We can make white neon signs for the doors tomorrow.
Teresa, maybe Sandy could send out a memo to all members of the planning board and just remind them that masks are required.
Is this are we just talking about Borough Hall? I just want to make sure.
Well, technically you can say all borough buildings, but I know already that would be DPW, and they're mandatory there. Our staff uses them. Chief, they're masked in PD. Bicentennial Hall, it's rarely used. I think you have a meeting there tomorrow. You certainly could make sure we have a mask on, but you could certainly say they're mandatory in all borough buildings.
Until further notice.
Community centers being used with scouts and things like that, other. meetings, so.
Do I need to call for that motion now?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Guys,
Aye.
Opposed?
I would say the only exception would be for borough employees when they need to eat food or drink.
I need to make another motion so they can eat food and drink?
I think that's
Okay. Susan, I don't know if you still.
If I can say something,
Absolutely.
we just gotta be a little bit careful, because if you put a thing out there, say, we don't have to define like in your own office, which we do now, I think maybe you say all visitors, and then you decide what your staff does, because if you say I have to wear a mask, you're putting out there for a mask, then we didn't put in there, like, if you're in your own office, you don't have to wear it, like what we have now.
Yeah.
When you say visitors, I just think that, if there's a resident, that's the chief. Because what's going on tomorrow night, we're gonna come up with all these things because we're having this meeting tomorrow night. So someone's trying to rush to do all this stuff because there's a meeting tomorrow night. I just think that we're getting ahead of ourselves because there's a meeting tomorrow night. They think a lot of people will be here.
but we have to make sure that.
Visitors.
have to make sure that- But visitors includes the board members as well, right? So
Yeah, I mean, they're
gotta be
visitors, we
clear
don't
about
actually
that.
work here. I just think that we're, until we start defining it, like, oh, you have it now, you're in your office, you're by yourself. For us, you say, oh, for ourselves, don't wear a mask, right? I mean, then I think we just say, oh, mask, and somebody gets sick, they say, well, the person has a mask on. I think, unless we have it really spelled out, I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves because.
Well, I'm sorry, Chief, I presume to them in public areas. of
Yeah,
building.
maybe public areas, I just think that.
You know, we're not- I mean, if you're in your office by yourself and you're.
Yeah, and that's kind of how we have it now, the policy pretty much.
I had presumed it was public areas.
Public areas.
That's what everyone, any place like Red Bank has the mask requirement, but the people that are behind the glass don't, in the
Yeah.
tax department. don't have to
Public
wear
areas
it.
or indoor visitors.
But that's what I
I
presumed.
make a motion to amend it to public areas.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
You don't want to argue with that, force about what's the one the mask tomorrow?
Oh, yeah, that would be very sense of it.
Susan, I don't know if you're still there, but thank you for that recommendation. Teresa,
Yeah, well, I tell you, I was on a United flight back from vacation in November. And there was one person in a family who wouldn't put her mask on. They kicked that family off the plane. It was interesting.
Well, again, we have to remember though, there are some exceptions, right? Just like when the governor put out the mandate, there's still exceptions for it. We can't,
There's health.
you know, if you have a health concern, we can't sit there and say, hey, or you have a health concern, can't ask, you can't force them to show some stuff, there's some, you know.
Yeah, well, I have health concerns and I want to go to the meeting, so I would like to see everybody masked.
No, I understand that, I'm just saying there are some exceptions that when the governor had it last year, there's still some exceptions that. Just say, you know, if you say you have a medical condition, you can't wear a mask, I don't think we can.
Well, then they need to come with a doctor's note.
I don't think you do that.
Is there a possibility that the meeting should be moved somewhere like the Knollwood Auditorium?
I can't move it now, this
Oh,
juncture.
we can't even move it.
Notice has already
Just
been.
to say it's such a large.
Susan, what I would encourage to tell you here is, you know, I'm not sure if it'll be perfect tomorrow night, but it'll be a lot better than it was before you made this call. So I appreciate you bringing it up. And if you see someone without a mask, I just encourage you, stand up, walk to the other side of the room. I know that's not what you want to hear, but we want to keep you as safe and healthy as possible. So.
Oh, I'm going to gauge it tomorrow night, believe me.
Thank you, Susan.
And next up is Chris Hayden.
Hey, Chris, how are you?
Go ahead, Chris.
Hey, thanks. Chris Hayden, 142 Linden Drive. Just two comments. One, I really would like to thank the Borough Council for the addition of the stop signs at Kemp and Linden. It's a huge improvement and long overdue. So thank you all for that tremendously. I think there was at least one other intersection in town that got some stop signs, so it's great. Secondly, just more of a housekeeping type question. I feel like several months ago, Verizon descended upon the town and put up a bunch of new telephone poles, which was wonderful, except they never attached the wires to the new poles. They're all still hanging on the old poles. So we're not reaping any benefit of Verizon putting up new telephone poles. And we guess we dodged a bullet with no major storms this fall, thankfully. But is there an ETA perhaps on when Verizon and JCPL and all the other wires hanging off the poles will be moved?
Yeah, Chris, I don't think we have that update. We can look into it and get back to you if that would be helpful to you.
Great, thank you, appreciate it.
Chris, thank you.
Great night.
Thank you for the call. Teresa?
That's it on people with their hands up, sir.
Okay, all right. Thank you for everyone that contributed. We're now going to move to executive session. Formal action will not be taken. And
Motion.
Second.
time is 8:21 p.m.
Aye.
Aye.
All closed.